the next section within section 4, the next part of section 4, the fourth level of where one has to have bitachon, which is bitachon. How do we understand bitachon when it comes to our own performance of mitzvahs? Hey, Aaron, how do we understand bitachon, trust in Hashem, when it comes to our own performance of Torah mitzvahs? Meaning to say like this, it says, Aval bir hachelek haravit, explain the fourth part, which deals with inyani chayves halavavos, when it comes to the responsibility we have to things of the heart, meaning to say chayves halavavos, usually referring to the laws that are connected to, or the mitzvahs that are connected to belief, love, yiras Hashem, fear of Hashem. So when it comes to how does a person apply this to the ideas of bitachon? Where are you supposed to place your trust in Hashem when it comes to the performance of Torah mitzvahs? And here, the Rabbeinu Bachya goes totally 180 from what he said until now. When it comes to anything material, anything in our life, whether it's health, wealth, finding happiness, dealing with friends, dealing with relatives, dealing with enemies and foes, the fundamental idea is that a person has to have bitachon in Hashem. And like we learned in the previous classes, is understanding that a person is in every situation for a reason, even sometimes if it means you have to take a social break, etc. When it comes to avodas Hashem, a person may find that he or she could apply the same rules. That what do you want from me? This is the situation. This is who I am. This is the situation I'm in. So Shabbos is difficult for me, etc. So now he's going to go in to explain at what places can a person apply bitachon, and when places a person have to understand that this is your responsibility when it comes to your own performance of Torah mitzvahs. In this section 5 deals with the mitzvahs that are ben adam, that are connected, that involve others. There's certain mitzvahs that are not about just you. There's mitzvahs that you're part of a community or part of a group. But in the mitzvah, when it comes to your serving Hashem, the things that you have to do, so where do you apply bitachon? So he says like this: Avabir chelek arvi minyani chayvus levavos, vehevarim, meaning the mitzvahs that you do with your body. Asher te'alton v'niskan miyuchad ba'adam. That these are, he says over there, hate'eles, the benefits shetitzmach mikim mitzvahs that a person gets from the mitzvahs, or the damages hanezik sheyigarim mi'ikayoman from not performing the mitzvahs, is about the persons. These are things that are connected to the person, that are what's considered bein adam lamakom, between a person and Hashem. Vehem kigoyin, for instance, he says, hatzoim, if you're going to fast, and it comes to a fast day, tefillah, davening, building or eating in a sukkah, lulav, having tzitzis, shmir Shabbos, keeping the laws of Shabbos, v'hamoedim, or the holidays, V'hamaniyas min dvar masurim, avoiding things that are prohibited to you. Uklal chayves halavavos she'einin oivrim el zulasai. There are things that are about the obligations of the heart, chayves halavavos, obligations of the heart, that are not about that are not connected to someone else. It's about your love for Hashem, your fear of Hashem, your bitachon and belief in Hashem. V'te'altan v'niskan miyuchad boy bil adei shar b'nei adam. And their benefits and the damages, mean to say that what happens if you don't perform the mitzvahs, that are not connected to other people. I mean, he says like this: the choice of how one deals when it comes to the mitzvahs. Am I going to live in a sukkah? Am I going to eat in a sukkah? Am I going to make sure I have tzitzis? Am I going to keep Shabbos? It's not about you're affecting other people. It's about you. This is about you. Are you keeping Shabbos or not? Are you eating kosher or not? So he says like this: Hanoisim hakshurim v'chayvus adam. So he goes, the idea when it comes to mitzvahs that are connected to other people, so that will be discussed in section 5. He says like this. I'm just going to read from the commentary. I'm going to read from the commentary over here. It says like this: there's in all the things when it comes to our spiritual obligations, there's a single idea here, and that is Everyone has a free choice. Are you going to keep Shabbos or not? Are you going to keep kashrus or not? Everything has been decided by God besides the fear or lack of Hashem. He says, when in the previous chapters we've learned, when it comes to the material life of a person, it's not just about the person and themselves, right? So we have, when it comes to, we're in section 5, section 4 of Parak 4. In the English, this would be part 17, observing commandments and with trust. So he says this. Before this, in the other sections, the previous sections, we've discussed that that when it comes to material things, that it's not just up to the person themselves. There's so many variables, and not even about other people, but how Hashem puts us in certain situations. So we learned that there has to be hishtadlus, there has to be participation, up to a certain measure. And if you do what you're supposed to do, and therefore you're constantly relying on Hashem. What we learned in the past up until this point was that Hashem wants us to do participation. You have to do askas, you have to do hishtadlus, you have to do your efforts. But at the end of the day, whether it works or not, if this job is going to be successful, if this operation is going to be successful, what have you, if this year's crops are going to be successful, you have to plow. But at the end of the day, it's up to Hashem if it's going to work. So a person, after studying all this of the Rabbeinu Bachya, a person could say the same thing applies to my observance of Torah mitzvahs. But if to think that same idea, that a person could say, listen, just like if everything about my life, I have to do participation, I have to do effort. But if the effort's going to be, if what the results are going to be, and most of what's happening over here is my trust in Hashem, that this is the situation. That is only about material or things that are non-directly connected to Torah mitzvahs. When it comes to things that are connected to Torah mitzvahs, he says to think that you could just rely on Hashem, he said that's a toast, that's a mistake. When it comes to mitzvahs, the obligations a person has when it comes to the performance of mitzvah is on a totally different level than your obligations when it comes to anything else in your life, material, health, etc. A person has to check, and we're going to discuss in what parts is there bitachon. If everything's about you, so where is the bitachon part of it? So a person may think that Rabbeinu Bachya is telling us that there's no hashgacha when it comes to mitzvahs. Everything is on me. So that also is wrong. So he's going to go into explain that there's 3 components when it comes to a person's approach to observing Torah mitzvahs. There are parts that are totally up to you, and there are parts that at the end of the day, everything is biyad Hashem. For instance, at the end of the day, you could have all the good intentions to daven in a minyan. If 10 people don't show up, it's not. I mean, to lie in your bed and say, well, Hashem is going to have to figure out how, I'm tired and how I'm going to daven. That you have to get up and you have to go to shul and you have to. But you can't say that the person is responsible if there's no minyan or if the other things that happen that override, so to say, your ability to perform the mitzvahs. But he'll explain clearly what he means. He says, so I'm going to explain exactly how one is supposed to have bitachon when it comes to the performance of Torah mitzvahs. And now he does a side prayer, which is a very important thing with Chlam when it comes to teaching. He says, Hashem Eshel, he's asking from God, that God should have compassion, that, like they say in Yiddish, ich soll treffen the emes, that I should hit the truth. It's not, when it comes to these ideas, it's sometimes hard to make sure you're not explaining it wrong, you're not over-explaining it, you're not under-explaining it, or you're not leading a person astray. So the obligation a person has, he or she, when they're teaching, is that people are studying from you. And when they study from you, you have to be careful that you're not teaching in anything that's incorrect. So he's asking Hashem for Hashem's blessing that he should be mechaven to the emes. Okay, but he explains like this. Now to the point at hand. Shemaisa hamishmas. When it comes to listening, he says like this: When it comes to listening to the commandments of God, the kiyama mitzvahs and performance of the mitzvahs, v'chayvus, v'hamiri, or any of the miri means any of the rebelling against Hashem. Lo yitachon adam ella. So he says, it's not going to be possible unless a person understands that there are three categories when it comes to approaching Torah mitzvahs. The first approach is Bechiras, the choice that you've made of Hamashmas Lashem Isala b'machshavtei u'matzpunei. Now, the seemingly what Rabbeinu Bachya is going to be saying is simple, but it's not so simple. He crosses on certain subjects that are kind of complicated, where the Rabbeinu Bachya is basically going to go into that Torah mitzvahs is very clear. What you have to do and what you should and should not do is very clear in Torah. I mean, if you study, the information is there, and you have the obligation to be knowledgeable as much as you can, to know how and what you should be doing, and you have to do that. And therefore, a person to come and say, "Well, I don't know," or "What am I supposed to be doing?" and Hashem has to guide me. Hashem did guide you. He gave you Torah mitzvahs and told you how you're supposed to live the life. And it comes to Torah mitzvahs. So he's saying is that number one is that you can't say that you don't have the information. Number two is he seems to be indicating that there's no uncertainty when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, but we have to understand how to apply that, because there are within the things we should be doing, there's choices we have to make, and so there's the bechira we have to make within the permissive, within the obligations that we have. What should I be doing at this point? What should I be doing at that point? So there is the concept of sfeikus. The Alter Rebbe talks about that. The Rebbe talks about that. There's very much the concept of that. The Rebbe even says that to have a suffix, to have a doubt of things within Torah itself, you have to have siyat shema. You have to hope that you're going to be, that you have to have bitachon, that Hashem is going to help you understand within the choices that you have. But that the fact that you're making a choice to serve Hashem, you can't say, well, that's, Hashem put me in this situation, so therefore I don't have to serve Hashem because, I live amongst non-Jews. I live in a situation where there's no kosher food. So what do you want from me? I'm not going to eat kosher. Right? So that you have to open up the Shulchan Aruch and see when you can, when you can't. You can't just throw the situation and say, well, if Hashem wanted me to be successful, my job would earn. But if I put in the hours that are not earning, so then we say you have to have bitachon. You have to do your participation. But whether you're going to be successful or not, that's up to Hashem. But when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, you can't say, well, there's no kosher food, so therefore I'm just going to eat whatever's available to me. So he says, but he breaks it down to three components. Number one is is the commitment to listen to Hashem. The number one thing a person has to understand is up to you to make the choice that I'm going to listen to what the Torah says. Ha'adam, I'm going to explain. He says over here, Adam yigabesh b'sichlei v'libo. A person must make the decision in their heart and in their mind. Ha'achlata pnimis, an internal commitment. L'kayim es mitzvahs, to keep the mitzvahs. Lo lemante elas ishus el lishmai shel Hashem bavad. Not because it serves you or your interest to serve Hashem. You're keeping the mitzvahs because that's what Hashem wants you to do. So that's the number one commitment. That's it. Number one is you're committed to what the Torah says. Not analyzing the Torah to see how the Torah meets your wants or your needs, but to say, this is what the Torah wants me to do, and I'm committed to doing what the Torah wants me to do. That's number one. And Vasheni, the second rule when it comes to our performance of Torah mitzvahs is a hakavana v'hayazma lahoitzi lepoyel as a ma'aseh shelichut livchaisai. It's not just that you're saying, I want to listen to Hashem and I'm committed to listen to Hashem, but actually forming a plan to listen to Hashem. He says, L'ha'itzi l'poyel is to create that you should be able to actualize the actions and the resolutions that you've chosen. Adam, he says over in the explanation, Adam yinkoit tichnain v'yizuma l'ha'itzi achlatim min ha'koyach l'poyel. It's your obligation to create a strategy of how you're going to perform the Torah mitzvahs. And that's the bechira. That's your choice. Again, like the famous story, the Alter Rebbe met a person who lived on the other side of the river, and he had a kretschma. He had an inn that was his livelihood. That was his parnasa. And and the Alter Rebbe says, why do you being on where he lived, he had no ability to be part of a Jewish community, and all that includes in a Jewish community, a minyan, etc., kosher food, a mikvah. And the Alter Rebbe says, why do you live here? He says, that's my parnasa. Meaning to say that he's saying that his parnasa dictates and is the conclusion of how his Torah life is, that because he has parnasa, and his parnasa is that he's located in an isolated area, so therefore it affects his ability to perform Torah mitzvahs. And the Alter Rebbe answered him, the same God that is able to provide for everyone else who lives in the community on the other side of the river could provide for one more person. Meaning to say that the hatzlacha in your business, that's up to God. But the resolution to create the environment for you to be a Torah observing Jew, a person who keeps Torah mitzvahs, a person who lives in a community, that's your choice. So therefore, it's the same thing over here. The planning of how to do the Torah mitzvahs, that's you have to create the plan. And it's your job to create a strategy how to do what Hashem wants for you to do in this world. And the third part is is to actually do the mitzvahs. Means to actually be involved. His askus means to be involved, to affect, to actually use your body to do what has to be done. And the third component is to say that's not always up to you. Means the creating the strategy, the commitment to Torah mitzvahs, the strategy to actualize Torah mitzvahs. That's up to you. Then there's certain things that are out of your control. And there you have bitachon. You have to hope Hashem is going to create. And when it doesn't happen, you have bitachon that there's a reason Hashem said that that's not going to happen, right? A person could sit there and say, why I wanted to go to shul. I went to shul. I sat in a shul. And there's supposed to be a minyan. There's no minyan there. So you can get upset, but I wanted to sit in Rosh Hashanah and be part of a minyan. Okay, but that's already not up to you. You're dependent on the other 9 people that have to show up. And there's other things like that. Yeah, he's going to explain over here. Go shleisha shlavim heim oifer. What do they say? He puts it down to one sentence. What are the 3 stages when it comes to avodas Hashem and serving Hashem? Hachlatas pnimis, an inner resolution to serve Hashem. Tichlein v'yizma, to create a plan and a strategy. And b'tzui ma'aseh, to actually do the mitzvah. Now, b'shuris lahalan, going forward, Rabbeinu Bachya is going to explain in here in the Shaar Habitochon in this section. He said, bitachon Hashem, where does a person supposed to have trust in Hashem when it comes to the performance of mitzvahs? Yesh lahasher rak l'shlav shlishi. It's only in the third part, to be able actually to do the mitzvah. Again, not the commitment and the plan is on your side. The actual, there's like in every situation, not everything is in your control. And therefore, for a person to be upset, it's not just that a person it's fallback. You have to have absolute bitachon that for whatever reason, Hashem didn't want this to happen. Even though you planned for it to happen and you worked for it to happen and you created a strategy for it to happen. But if it doesn't happen, you have bitachon. It's clear, not just that you say, okay, what can I do? God decided. But you have bitachon for whatever reason, just like we have bitachon in parnasa, or just like you have bitachon in trust when it comes to social situations, that for whatever reason, Hashem wants you to be in this situation. He wants you to be in this situation where the things that are out of your control, for whatever reason, are the way they are. So he says, "V'shurus lahal Rabbeinu Bachya mevar." Going forward, the Rabbeinu Bachya is going to explain. Ki habitachon b'Hashem, the trust in God, yesh lahasher rak l'shlav shlishi, only for the third part. L'shlav habitzui ma'aseh, the fact, the question if you can actualize the commitment and strategy that you created. Again, what does strategy mean? Strategy is not just strategy means like in any strategy, right? If you is creating the ability for you to do it. Like, it means you have to approach, what Rabbeinu Bachya is saying, is you have to approach Torah mitzvahs like you would approach anything else that's important to you in your life, right? If just like you create a strategy to try to feed yourself, and just like you try to create a strategy and you have a commitment to eat, and if you have a commitment to have a nice home that you should have, and you have a commitment to have what you need for your family that you should have, and you have a commitment to live in a place that has good schools that you should, all those things, the same strategy, and even more so, you have to apply when it comes to doing Torah mitzvahs. So he says like this, ha'atzlacha, the fact if you're going to be successful, be bitzui, that's not always dependent on the person. You have to have trust that it's going to work out. But this again, and this applies. There's many components of this, and we're going to have to walk it back a bit because the Rabbeinu Bachya is going to give us a very so to say black and white. A very, very black and white attitude to Torah mitzvahs, and we're going to have to navigate through that a bit on certain things where there is sfeikis, where there's doubts and etc. But there's our question. It's not like everything, though everything is in the Torah. but the Torah does leave places for a person to have doubt, and there's not always clarity, that of what within what we should be doing is the actual, a person makes a decision to go out and help others in Torah mitzvahs at the sacrifice of their own Torah mitzvahs. So there's certain questions that come up. Okay, so he says like this: Lumazais, Shnei Shlavim Arishonim, the first two stages of the commitment to do what Hashem wants and to create a strategy is b'chirasi b'chirasi. That is your choice and that's your obligation. A person can't say, well, it's not my problem. Hashem has to create the environment that I should want to make a commitment, or that you make my strategy easy. Means all of a sudden when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, you're falling back on his shtadlus. So all I could do is try. No, you have to really try. You have to really create a strategy. And the strategy is not just about the technicalities, the mathematics. There's other parts where the stage 1 and stage 2 come into play. And that is, for instance, a lot of people, when it comes to the performance of Torah mitzvahs, sometimes we have to understand how that works with our character. You say I'm an angry person, right? I'm an angry person, so therefore I'm going to be shouting and being hurtful to people because that's what kind of person. That doesn't work. You can't say, well, God created me an angry person, so therefore I'm angry. Or God created me in any way that I feel that I was created, and therefore, if it comes into conflict with Torah mitzvahs, well, why did He make me this way? We open up the Torah and Shulchan Aruch and say, what does the Torah want us to do in certain situations? And then we have to say, I have to be committed to do that. And it's maybe difficult for me and easy for someone else in other places. That's the way it is. But I have to make a commitment that this is what Hashem wants me to do, and I'm going to do what Hashem wants me to do. And so a person can't say, Oi, Hashem Yorbi HaMotivatzia. He says over here, I'm not motivated. So if God wants me to do Torah mitzvahs, he has to motivate me, right? A person doesn't say, most people won't say, well, if God wants me to eat, He better motivate me to have a job. People they try to get a job, some people, and then most people, and then they hope that Hashem gives them success, that they're successful. But all of a sudden it comes to our mitzvahs, God, let God motivate me, let Him inspire me. You have to take the first two levels of commitment to do Torah mitzvahs and to create a strategy to do Torah mitzvahs. That's up to you. Now he continues in the original text. Asher einam na'elamim lanu mihem. So he says, Yesh shlavim, there are parts, shlagabeim einenu yecholim litain shiratzin Hashem nister meitanu. A person may say, well, I don't know what God wants me to do. The Torah is very clear what we should be doing. And if you don't know, then of course you ask a Rav, a rabbi. He says, for instance, the first two things, the fact that you make a commitment to listen and to not rebel. Or the second one, the intentions and the strategy to do it, that's you can't say, well, it's not been clear. It is clear. It's clear. Hashem is clear to us what he expects from us. If a person is going to have trust, if you're saying that I don't have to have a strategy, I don't have to have a commitment, I'm going to have bitachon. Hashem is going to do it for me. Hashem is going to inspire me to be committed. No, the choice to be committed is yours. Sichlis, he goes, that is a mistake and that's foolish. God already gave us to listen and not rebel. Like it says, we just learned in this week's in these parshas. Choose life. God says, I give you life, I give you tov, I give you maves, I give you death, I give you bad. Choose life. When it comes to the shlava shlishi, our ability, that's not up to us. Not always is it up to us. The commitment, yes. The strategy, yes. If it's going to work out, always that's not totally up to us. There are things, sibos, there are reasons that are outside of us that are not in our control. Many things. Is he talking to be itim isyamim itim nivtzarim heimi medu? And there are things like that are out of our ability to perform. Again, there's many. Not performing doesn't mean that I have a desire for something, and therefore that's the shlava shlishi. That's the third thing. That what do you want? I really want to do something. I know what the Torah says. I'm committed in theory to what the Torah says. I'd like to create a strategy what the Torah says, but this is what I want to do. So it's not possible for me not to do it. No, that's not possible means that it's really not possible. Not that you're not ready to do it. Again, no one's perfect, and everyone has things that they have to work on, and people know. And sometimes, and a lot of times, we're not perfect even in the decisions we make. I'm not just talking about that we make the wrong decisions or we're weak in the decisions. Sometimes we know intentionally that we're making the wrong choice, but we are weak, and that's okay. That's regular, and we do tshuva for that. But to put that on God and say that's God's problem, not my problem, that's where you're saying it's wrong. Saying to say that God has to create my motivation, God has to create my strength. God told you what you have to do, and He says, He empowers us to make those choices. Again, it's not going to always work out that we can, and for many reasons, but the commitment and the strategy is ours. And he gives an example in the third place, which, like I was been talking about, the idea of a minyan. He says, Adam hichlit, if a person makes a commitment, lispal b'minyan, that for now on I will only daven with a minyan of people. And what is the strategy? Right? You can't just say I have a strategy, I'm going to daven with the minyan. So if you live in a city that has minyanim, that has a minyan, so the strategy obviously is you find out where your shul is and what minyan you would like to join, right? You can't just say, I'm going to daven with the minyan, they wake up in the morning and not have any information. Strategizing means is you find out. You join the WhatsApp groups, you find out what time davening is. So you know where you want to daven. Basic Knesses, basic Shah, what shul, what time, V'daik v'giyah sham lizman, and you come there, you show up. Usually, if the minion comes and gathers, and it's usually a successful operation, for whatever reason it doesn't happen, the minion doesn't come together. Or if you can't come for whatever reason, you get sick. God forbid. When we pass whatever, there's many reasons you want to, right? You leave on time, there's traffic. Right? There's things that are out of our control. That's again, and you approach this. This is a big thing that we do. Some people struggle with. I know I struggle with that. For instance, you want to go somewhere, you want to do something, and then it's out of your control. You're stuck in traffic or whatever. So that's what not only you're not supposed to get upset, but you have to actually have bitachon that for whatever reason, even though your intentions were good, and even though you're doing what you should be doing, and then you want to do it, but it's not, for whatever reason, Hashem decided you're not going to be doing it. For whatever reason, that's where you have the bitachon, like you have bitachon in anything else. So there, you had the achlat, you had the resolution, you had the plan, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And he continues, v'chein, so too. Habiterech al Hashem v'bchirasa mishmas l'Hashem v'yemer. Lo yefcher v'lo yiskav l'asiyis davar mimashmas Hashem. Ad sheyivcheli mihen ma sheyesh boi tevasi. He says, but if a person has trust and says, I'm not going to choose anything, I'm not going to plan anything, God's going to have to feed me with my whole avodah and Torah mitzvahs. So he goes, Misha chashiv l'hayir b'dei Hashem. If a person thinks to leave it up to God, the choices, the strength to make the choices, and thinks that means bitachon Hashem. I trust God. If God wanted me to be motivated for mitzvahs, He would motivate me. That's not bitachon. Harizet toya b'shvil hayoyser uma'adu ashurav min haderech hanochen. You're not. That's a mistake. That's not the way it works. You have to create an environment. You have to be committed to the environment. And if it doesn't work, you would, like in anything you approach. In anything you approach, if you're committed to it and you want to do it, you don't like what did the Rebbe quotes from Reb Zusha, the attitude that a person has to have in avodas Hashem. You could learn 5 things from the thief, right? So it's the Rebbe quotes that Reb Zusha says the thief doesn't give up, and if it doesn't work the first time, he tries it again. Same thing in avodas Hashem. You can't just say, well, it didn't work. I tried to get inspired. You try again, and you try again. Ki Hashem kfar tziva, but he says at the end of the day, Hashem already chose. Tzivanu commanded us. Leave charas ha'maisa mashmas. what we're supposed to be doing. And he also told us, and therefore we have an obligation to create a strategy of how to get it done. To glorify Hashem. And he told us what we should and should not be doing in this world, and what will benefit us in this world and the afterlife. So again, if a person says, "I don't know if keeping Torah mitzvahs is for me," well, obviously you don't run into it, and there's depending where you're coming from. All there's a lot of variables, but the fundamental idea is that Hashem told us what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and it's up to us to do it and to choose a strategy to do it. If we're going to be successful every time, that's not always up to us, but the commitment and planning is up to us. Now he says, "V'im niskabnu asibus." It's afshra hapol ha'mais mashma Hashem kod b'chereseinu isa. It's like this: v'im niskenu hasibos. V'nis afshra ha'pa'olas ha'mais, and it's able for if we made a plan and it's able, we're able to do it. V'mashma Hashem kod b'chereseinu isa, in listening to Hashem because we chose to. Is yilan shefa ha'gmul. We're going to have a flow. So then you're going to have the reward of what you tried to do. You tried to listen to Hashem. You tried to do the mitzvah. You made a plan. So he's saying, as far as reward and punishment goes, even if if it didn't work out, that's not on you anyway. So it's not about the punishment, the reward. There's no punishment, and there's the reward for the commitment. The effort is but when it comes to Hashem is not a zero sub. It doesn't say, well, did you not do it? Hashem wants to know, did you try to do it, and what was your commitment to do it? And He knows what we're committed to and what we've tried, and therefore that doesn't go at all unnoticed. And therefore there's a reward and punishment for that. And if for whatever reason to actualize it didn't work out, doesn't make a difference. So he's talking about the pasha on the reward and punishment side of things. He says that on the reward and punishment side, effort counts. Hashem wants to see that we tried. He says over here, there's also a punishment when it comes to rebelling, and the punishment is not just on the actual rebelling. A lot of times we want to do an avera, and Hashem has Rahmanas on us, and it doesn't work out, right? We plan to do an Avera for whatever reason, and out of our control, it doesn't work out. Like out of our control, things don't work out in the positive. Out of our control, things don't work out in the negative. God didn't want you to do that Avera. So you may think, well, Baruch Hashem, Hitzalti, I was saved. Of course, yes, the actual Avera wasn't done. But God also noticed that you wanted to do the Avera. Just like He notices when you do the good thing, He also notices when you wanted to do the bad thing. Of course, it's not like you did it. It doesn't have the same effect. But if the only reason you didn't do it is not because you yourself had tshuva or you yourself had regrets, but because the circumstances didn't let you do it, you may say, well, like Baruch Hashem, I did the Vera. Yes, you didn't do the Vera, but that wasn't because you didn't want to do the Vera, or because it was out of your control. It didn't work out. It says like this. I'm going to read the commentary. It's just like it's in the positive, so too is if a person chooses the negative. Let's say a person chooses to do something bad. It's not only did you choose to do something bad, you actually made a strategy about how to go about and get it done. But the third part, like in the positive, didn't work out. It was out of your control. The person that you wanted to do an avera with didn't show up. God had compassion on you and intervened and didn't allow for your avera to actualize. So what does it work in such a situation? It says mikir kazeh. There is the part that you've made a choice on. That means that just like in the mitzvah, the part of the choice is the choice to resolution to do good and the planning to do good. So too, there is the component in the Avera. Obviously, not the same thing like the action of the Avera. When it comes to good, it says Bachya Tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzaref L'Maisa. It's brought down clearly that a good intentions God connects to action, even if you're not able to fulfill the action for whatever reason, but the intentions counts. Bachya Tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzaref L'Maisa. good intentions, God is mitzaref. He connects it to action. Even if the action doesn't actualize, he connects it as if you did do it. And that applies to many mitzvahs, right? A person could look around and say, I want to give a lot of tzedakah. I just don't have the ability, not because you don't think you have the ability, because you don't have the ability. So then you may say, well, yeah, you wanted to, right? The story of Hanina ben Daisa. Everyone's bringing something to the temple. He can't bring anything to the temple. So Hashem, he brings a little stone. He brings a stone. He finds a stone. Did he go out there and write a check for $100,000? No, but Hashem, that stone was precious. It says the part of the base of English that's standing now, the part of the Wailing Wall that's standing now is the parts of the donations from the poor people. I read a story once that the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe Chabad, that wasn't always, the Rebbes were not financially secure. They had a lot of difficulties when it came to actual money. So that means they had very limited, especially in Russia in those days. So they said a story that a poor person walked into the Rebbe Rashab's home, and the Rebbe Rashab and the Rebbitzin were sitting there. Not sure if it was before he was Rebbe or after, or there's also an in-between time where the Rebbe kind of didn't officially accept the leadership. 10 years was a long time by the Rebbe Rashab. And she looked at her husband, the Rebbitzin Stern Sarah, as if, do you have any money to give him? And he made it with his hands. I have nothing. And that means he didn't even have a coin to give the poor person. I think the story goes that she gave him some food, but or nothing. I'm not sure. Maybe she didn't have anything. But sometimes you want to do it, but you don't have the ability. But same thing in the negative. Is he says b'mikra kazeh, in such a situation in the negative is you do, there is a punishment on the first two parts, which is the planning and the want to do the avera. Even though it didn't work out, the things that you had choices on, which was that you wanted to do the avera, so that's on you, and you try to you try to do it, and it just didn't work out for you. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more, and then we'll open up to questions to finalize the class. This I just want to finish off. Also, they have the story again. There's many stages when it comes to this part, where a person it's not just even if a person starts off with intentions to do an avera, and then has shuva charata, that's a big level also. That's not just, well, why do you ever have such a thought? What was it? There's a story of a chassid that went to a person that went to a place of sin, and was in a place he shouldn't have been in. And it doesn't say in the story if he was planning to do that or wasn't planning to do that, but at the end of the day is he went in, and the last second he jumped into those days. They used to have the public toilets were like the honey buckets, and so he was about to do an avera. Instead, he jumped into the sewer, and of course, no one was interested in having to come close to him to come get near him. He smelled, so it saved him from doing an avera, even though he had to do something drastic like that not to do the avera. It says when he walked into the shul, the tzaddik, I'm not sure who the story is with, the tzaddik said, I smell the smell of Gan Eden. Why? Because that person went through a challenge, but was able to overcome it. Okay, let's stop here, because then we're going to go to the next section. I thought maybe we'd go a little faster here. Didn't turn out like that. But if anyone has any questions on what we've learned so far today, please, now's a good time.
Yeah, so just to review, if a person really wants to do a certain mitzvah and really, really tries and it just doesn't work out for whatever reason, they still get the schar for doing it anyway.
Say that again.
If a person really wanted to do a specific mitzvah,
Mhm.
really tried, but it just did not work out, did they still get the schar for doing the mitzvah anyway? Or
First of all, we have a clear statement. Machshava tova kadosh baruch hu mitzaref l'maaseh. Good intentions, God combines with action. So yes, what level? It all depends. It all depends of the circumstances, and it all depends. Again, in these situations, there's no. It's you and God. We're not talking about you. We're not talking about this part of Rabbeinu Bachya when it comes to mitzvahs has nothing to do with anyone else. It's you and God. So this is totally between you and God. So you just in this time, it's best to have that open conversation. If you really tried, and and God knows if you really tried. So in that, there's the people that the entities that are involved here know it from both sides. So Hashem knows the truth, and you know the truth. So in these situations, if you know that you taka tried and it was out of your control, then sometimes you get even more reward than had you done the mitzvah. There's a certain satisfaction of doing something that it's brought down. I can't remember the source of that. There's a certain satisfaction of doing something that the satisfaction takes away a bit from the reward. Means that.
But also, if a person tries hundreds and hundreds of times and is never able to achieve what they're trying to do, and then they can turn on themselves and say there's something wrong with me and go down a dark hole, and
100%, 100%. Yes, we never that. Listen, this is years. This is definitely the month where we don't give up on ourselves. You don't give up on ourselves. We're not, again, like I said, Rabbeinu Bachya is painting us a very this section. In this section, he gets very seemingly a little out of the character than what we've learned until now about the Rabbeinu Bachya gets very black and white, because in certain conversations it's important to be black and white, to be very exact, and then on top of that you build, because if you're certain times there's the foundation is kind of giving way for vulnerability, for flexible, to be flexible. There's certain times where the foundation has to be very black and white, but on top of that there's the practical, and the practical is, like you said, yes, you could try many times to do something, and it's not that, and it is within your power. You give into weakness.
it might be because of external circumstances, but then you turn in on yourself and take it out on yourself and get very upset, very depressed, anxious because of external circumstances giving you constant rejection, constant negative. It can turn that way.
You're 100% right, and therefore that's why Rabbeinu Bachya says in this section you have to have bitachon, because it means when it's out of your control, it's something that's not up to you, and you tried and you said, first of all, like in any situation, you do have to go back to stage 1 and 2, or at least 2, and ask yourself, is there something wrong in my strategy? Like, if you're going to try to show up at a show that never has a minyan, and you keep on trying over and over again, and then you get upset. So you have to ask yourself, is it time to find another minyan? So there's certain things where in the strategy part of it means you can't be lazy and you have to be honest. So you have to ask yourself in the strategy part of it, are you creating what is within your control for this to be successful?
Let's say it's in a different realm. Let's say a person needs the parnasa and they're trying job applications for a year, and they've tried hundreds and hundreds of times and they're not getting anywhere, and meanwhile their needs are not being met and they're taking it out on themselves.
That's not even in the realm that we're talking about over here, because that's in the realm of bitachon, in worldly things, that we mostly have to have trust in Hashem, and we have to just do ishtadlus. We just have to do participation. Again, in every situation, you have to ask yourself, where could you do better in trying to find a job? If there's something that you could change about yourself, about your job application, what jobs you're looking for. Are you trying to
nowadays in that realm? A person can work for hours and hours and on applications, and it turns out that the job doesn't exist. Like 40% of the jobs on the online don't exist, but you can spend day after day trying to apply for things that don't even exist and wasting your time.
Hey, yeah, you're right. Again, when it's out of your control, then you have to have the bitachon in Hashem. You can't give up. But if you're doing everything you can and you're applying in the right places, and you're saying that, like someone told me now that he was looking recently for past year, he was looking for a job. Baruch Hashem, he found it. But in the time he was looking for a job, he said it's very challenging. It seems like that the job market is going to get worse in America. That's what it seems like it's heading towards. So these things may not be getting better, but he was telling me there's a lot of things that HR does, even in jobs that are real. For instance, certain words that are in your application that they scan. If you have those words, then they're going to look at it. If not, they toss your. So there's certain things that you could become a little bit more knowledgeable to help upgrade and polish your presentation. But if at the end of the day, is everything you're doing is right, and the jobs you're applying for right, and you're in an honest way, you're speaking to people that can help you and say this is the right job offering, then at the end of the day, it comes down to bitachon. And you're right. And you have to make sure not to fall into yish, not to fall into despair. And don't blame yourself, and definitely don't get angry at yourself. And even if and be strong, even in a situation where that there's outside forces that are being hard on you because of that. To be strong. And so, it takes a lot of strength. Like in any situation of bitachon, it takes a lot of strength, and you have to have trust in Hashem. Hashem is the all liya kesef, liya zav. Everything is from God. So we have to know that, like in every situation, that for whatever reason you're going through that situation, the Eibusher hopefully will help you get through that and move on to better things. And while you're in that situation, you have bitachon. For whatever reason, Hashem wants you to be in that situation. All right, everyone. Laila Tov, and we'll continue this section next week. Take care.
Thank you.